No. I want to see a Muppets Lovecraft mashup.
I definitely want to see a Muppets Lovecraft.
There must be something. There must have been something Lovecraftian.
I did some early in Dolly's career as an AI art generator. I seem to recall spitting out Lovecraft characters as Muppets. It was pretty fun. Maybe I'll post a couple of them up. I don't know.
Muppet Cthulhu would be adorable. It's time to burn the incense. It's time to slay the sheep. It's time to wake the Muppets from 1,000 years of sleep.
Boom, 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 boom. Well, welcome to Podsawthoth, a Lovecraft book club, in which this episode I'm joined, as always, by my attorney and wife and business partner, Claire Reynolds. Hi, Claire.
Hello, Todd.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing okay. Yeah, this is episode 64. Nice.
Wow.
It's not nice, but it's a power too. So
no, I was just surprised.
Nice.
Well, I mean, I've only been on half of that.
Half of them. So this is your 30...
Something
episode.
I don't care about math anymore.
Episode.
I'm too old to care about math.
And yeah, we're going to talk about The Outsider.
Just one. Stay gold, pony boy. Stay gold.
Stay gold.
Stay gold. It's funny, on the outro for the story reading, I said we'd probably be talking a lot about Poe for this one.
Yeah.
But it turns out we're going to be talking about S.E. Hinton
Yeah.
instead. Yeah. Because I told Claire, she was like, hey, which one do I have to read today? I'm like, The Outsider. She's like, I already read it. I'm like, not the S.E. Hinton. That's plural.
So you mean there's no movie starring Ralph Macchio?
No, or that
C. Thomas Howell,
or that Dylan,
or Matt Dillon.
Yeah, I said that Dylan because I wasn't super
that
sure
Dylan.
what his first name was.
Not Kevin Dillon.
Not Kevin. Yeah. So, The Outsider. But before we get to that, we do have an emergency alert to all Lovecraft fans in the United Kingdom, and it sounds just like that.
Yeah, you're right. It would.
And that is the London Lovecraft Festival is coming up, if my calculations are correct, 1 week from 2 days ago.
It's London.
I know, so do I. We were there 1 year ago.
London's way cooler than Austin.
One year ago today.
On a night just like tonight.
So we will not be at the London Lovecraft Festival.
They have said that we are not welcome back.
We have not been re-invited.
No, we weren't banned or uninvited or anything.
We'll just say we have not been invited back.
Yes.
And we'll just leave it at that. We don't have to get into it.
Yeah. They chose not to extend us an invitation this year.
Right, exactly. So, but it is going on. It's at the same place at the Drayton Arms on Brompton in South Kensington, London. So if you're in range of that, you should definitely go. It's actually shorter this year than last year. It's only Sunday and Monday, and there's only like 2 shows on Monday or something. But 2 things. One, you should definitely go for Sunday night because our friend Kai Hastur has a show. It is a dramatic reading of From Beyond.
From the makers of Reanimator, From Beyond.
And if that does not sweeten the pot enough for you, I will let you know that I also make a cameo appearance, apparently, in From Beyond. I am an offstage recorded voice. So I'm 5% there. So if you love this show,
is it just wah 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 wah?
Oh, good grief.
it would be better if it was that wah 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 wah. No, I play the judge. It's a courtroom procedural version of From Beyond. You definitely should check it out. It's very good. Kai put a lot of work into it.
I don't know why I was not asked to be the judge.
I don't know why either. Probably because you're a lady.
No,
and there's no such thing as a lady judge.
Are you out of your mind? Are you nuts?
Except for Judge Judy.
Who's
That's
heard
it.
of that? Who's heard of a lady judge?
So that is all I have for opening business.
Okay.
London Lovecraft Festival We do miss London. We will come back if we're ever invited again.
I'll come back to London anyway.
Yeah, we'll go back at some other time. There's the London Podcast Festival, which is kind of a big deal.
That's big. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we could go to attend it. No one's
Yeah.
ever going to invite us to.
No, they're not going to invite us. We're not going to speak. Well, we could speak on like how to not run a podcast. We have lots of anti-patterns, which was in the New York Times crossword yesterday.
That's right.
Let's talk about The Outsider, because I read it. And
All right.
you just read it not 15 minutes ago.
Yes.
And I read it and I took a bunch of notes on it, which is our way. This is how the podcast works.
Yes.
I think like often I don't actually explain how the podcast works. And so if someone's just coming in the middle, it occurred to me because I was listening to Flophouse the other day and
They skipped over it and then they were like, oh, wait a minute. We got to go back. Yeah.
right. And they make a big deal out of
Yeah.
it. They're like, hey, what is this podcast about, Dan? And then they do a little joke and then they do the
Yeah.
thing, right? And so here's what the podcast is about. I'm going to level set here in episode, what did I say episode number
64.
was? Episode 64. That's right. It's 2 to the power of 8.
I just remember Beatles song.
And
Beatles.
it's the Beatles song. This is a very it's London, eh? Yeah, it's English. So how the podcast works. Every other episode, starting with the odd episodes, namely episode number 1, I read a story. Every even episode, Claire and I talk about the story. And we talk about the story, and we talk about influences, and we talk about references, and we talk about other things going on in the story, and we also talk about some nonsense, and that's where the comedy comes in.
See, that's where it comes in, guys. Now you know.
You get it?
Get it? Get it?
All right.
Like, oh, this is supposed to be funny?
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
Yeah, we are remarkably unfunny, but we try. Let me say right off the bat, I love The Outsider. It's great. It's like in my top 10. I've read it to 2 of my children as a bedtime story.
Yeah.
Two of the
Wow.
Yeah.
That.
When they were little. And
Yeah, of course. All right.
It was,
now I'm
but it wasn't the
beginning
first one I read to them. It was
Were they comforted by this?
no. They wanted to know,
Were
like
horrified?
They were both in a period in their lives, and it was like still bedtime story age, right? So it was like probably somewhere like 8 to 10 or something like
Yeah.
that. But they were interested in horror and fantasy
okay.
and dark stuff, right? Both of them, like
Okay.
independently, and I'm like, all right, well, let's jump into some Lovecraft, shall we? And so the first Lovecraft story I read to both of them was Cats of Ulthar, which I really liked.
Yeah, cats.
Because it's cats,
Yeah.
right? And who doesn't love cats? And these 2 are, super into cats.
Yeah, they're cat people.
And they are cat people.
Cat persons.
And then my second one, it's like, okay, well, did you like, you like that? Well, I have another one for you. It's a little darker, and it's called The Outsider. And that's where the Lovecraft story time ends.
Yeah. Well, mostly because I would think nothing really happens. There's no story.
Oh, I disagree.
Like-
I disagree strongly.
And so my issue is not so much with the story as
Mm-hmm.
I'm coming into it with a jaded eye of like being a 50-year-old adult in 2025
It is 2025.
who has already seen all of,
That's the thing,
like
right?
I knew from the very beginning like how it was going to end. Or like,
Sure.
the minute that
Uh-huh.
he goes,
So this is
the people
100
that everyone's scared.
This is a 100-year-old story.
Yeah. But that's not Lovecraft's fault. I mean,
right. Yeah. Things are tropey because of stories
Right.
like this.
Yeah.
There are obviously other influences on the story that predate The Outsider by 100 or so years. So it's fine. So I liked it. You were not surprised for sure, but I don't think that's the purpose.
No, I don't think that's the purpose either. I mean, I don't think it's, not every story back then was like had to have an M. Night Shyamalan twist.
True.
know?
I mean, and usually in Lovecraft stories, he gives away the ending like in the title.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you are well warned. I will say the 1920s and 30s, like golden age of content warnings. It was in the title.
No, I mean, it was atmospheric.
It is very atmospheric, which is why I like it. It starts off, we have the unnamed narrator, which is common for Lovecraft. The unnamed narrator, I'm going to go ahead and say he.
It's a they, them.
It's a they, them.
Sorry,
okay.
sorry.
You know
we
what?
have to cut that joke
Honestly,
out.
no.
That's a bad joke.
It's a good joke because we're in a fucking time.
Were we?
And this shit matters.
That's true. Let's find out.
Well, you know what? It's a story about body dysmorphia.
Yeah.
Honestly. The outsider is trapped in this tower, in this like disintegrating, crumbling tower. And all they have are like all the books in the world. What a terrible existence, right?
There have been many times in my life where that sounded like a fantasy, like a heaven.
So it starts off even. Unhappy is he to whom the memories of childhood bring only fear and sadness. Well, yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
So wretched is he who looks back upon lone hours in vast and dismal chambers with brown hangings and maddening rows of antique books. Maddening rows of antique books. Yeah, kind of sounds awesome. So it opens up with this pitiful character surrounded by books, and all they can do is
I mean, in my head, it was Gollum.
You don't have any friends. Nobody likes you.
You know what? I'm going to climb this tower that I've been living my entire life in, apparently.
A little bit of Gollum, a little bit of Rapunzel.
Gesundheit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know?
Gollumzel. Or
Rapalum.
Rapalum. Very good. But like a reverse Rapunzel, because he's at the bottom.
Yeah.
The classic reverse Rapunzel.
Why didn't I see it coming?
So he's like, it would be better to climb this tower, and die than live wondering what it would have been like to see the moon or whatever, right?
Yeah.
He says something along those lines. He climbs the tower. Like he gets above the tree line and it's still total blackness, right? Still total blackness. And he gets all the way to the top and he's like, oh, it must be like a copula. Is that the word? Is that how you pronounce it? What's the thing that's on the top of a tower?
I guess.
Copula or copula? I don't know. And
I don't know how you pronounce it.
Yeah. But he gets to what he assumes is the floor of a chamber at the top of the tower. And so he's like, oh, dang. And then he tries to get around and it doesn't. He pushes up the trapdoor there and he scrambles up there. And he's like, all right, cool. I'm in this room. I'm at the top. So surely I'll be able to see the moon. And he looks at the window. Lo and behold, in something that he scarce believes is a memory. He does recognize the moon, right? He's like, oh, it's the moon. Cool, I did it. Like I got above this dark, dark forest. And then he looks out and he's like, hang on. hang on one tick. Ground out there. He's like, wait a minute. This is crazy. I've been underground this whole time. What? And so he like opens up the door and he's like wandering around in the garden and he sees like a road and he follows the road and he kind of wanders off and then he sees a castle and he's like, what's going on here? And he kind of recognizes the castle, but he doesn't know like how or anything. And he's like, well, that's definitely a castle I've run into before. And so I should go check it out. And because like the one thing aside from seeing the moon that I've always wanted is to like hear gaiety and laughter, right? And like see a party. That's all I want in the world.
All I want.
Now that I've seen the moon.
Just this lamp.
All I want.
And to see a party.
Yeah, straight up power game and the remote control, and that's all I need.
That's right. So he does see, and he kind of hears it, and he sees it's like got light in there, and he's like, oh, light, what is that about? And then which, by the way, like, how is he reading underground? Like, surely there must be some kind of phosphorant, I don't know, algae or something that's throwing off light. But
it was about this time, when I started to get really sad.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, I don't like where this is going at all.
It is kind of goth. And he's like, hey, I want to. So he pulls a hey, you guys. And he bursts in. He's a sloth. And he yells, hey, you guys. And he comes into this party.
Trunk, that's all.
Yeah, exactly. And the party goes completely bananas.
Yeah.
Everyone freaks out. They're stumbling over each other. They're fainting. They're being pulled out.
Yes.
And then the people pulling them are fainting.
Right.
And then they get pulled out. And there's a whole thing, right? And everyone is freaking out. And then soon it is like the room is deserted.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, dang, I wonder what happened.
Yeah, that must have been something really scary they saw.
There must have been something pretty scary. And he's like, and he's looking around, and then he sees a little motion. And he's like, oh, maybe that's the scary thing. And he like peeks over, and he's like, holy shit. And then it's this horrible monster.
Yes.
That is in a room that's just beyond the threshold that looks a lot like this room. And he's like, what the fuck? And he starts freaking out because it's so horrifying, right? And then he tries to stumble away, but he does it wrong. And then he stumbles forward, and then he brushes his hand against this beast's paw. And then at that point, it clicks. And two things happen in quick succession. One, all his memories wash back of like, oh, right, I'm the monster, and I'm abhorrent, and I'm terrible, and I remember these people, and I remember their countenances, but not quite this way, which means to me means like, oh, these are ancestors, or these are descendants of whoever he did know.
Yeah.
So he has that shocking revelation,
Right.
and then he falls back, and then Nepenthe hits him, and Nepenthe is a whole thing, which we can get into in a second. But
somebody who came up behind him and whacked him on the head.
Somebody dropped a coconut on his head. And he's like, oh no, I'm a wild beast now, and that's what I do. And he goes off with the ghouls on the wind, the screeching
Lord of the Hunt, whatever.
Yeah, screeching ghouls on the wind. And he knows, like, no, this is my place. I have to haunt shit because that's my job. He knows that he's always an outsider, a stranger in the century, and among those who are still men. This I have ever known, since I stretched out my fingers to the abomination within that great gilded frame, stretched out my fingers and touched cold and unyielding surface of polished glass. Because it turned out it was a mirror. That was the monster, all that. So, and that's the story. That's basically, the four corners of the document.
Yeah.
So that's the story. And it is sad, and it's tragic, and so maybe it's about body dysmorphia. I think it's at least a little autobiographical for Lovecraft. That has been blown out quite a bit, over the years. Yeah. Of like, oh, this is Lovecraft saying like he himself is like a stranger among men in this century, right? Yeah. Which kind of tracks with his personality and everything. But I will say that I did see this in an HP Lovecraft encyclopedia edited by S.T. Joshi and David E. Schultz. That theory is a little overblown. Lovecraft talks a lot about how he had a very actually pleasant childhood, and he did a lot of pleasant, and he was like outdoors a lot, and he read a lot of books, and he had a good time.
Maybe he just thought it was a cool way to tell a story.
It's a cool way to tell a story. But in this entry, it does end with, in a very general way, the outsider may possibly be indicative of H.P. Lovecraft's own self-image, particularly the image of one who always thought himself ugly, and whose mother told at least one individual about her son's hideous face.
Oh!
I know, that is horrible.
Oh my God. All I could think about was how my son's first sentence was, "My have big head." Because he had a huge head, and we used to talk about it all the time before he knew words. My have big head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh boy.
He's a little outsider.
Ah, shit.
Yep.
Actually, he's not. He's pretty cool.
He's incredibly social.
Yeah.
Though he does yell at night quite a bit.
My have ugly face.
My have hideous face.
Hideous face. Oh, God. Oh, well, okay. So, but did she say that in front of him?
According to
oh my God,
the research.
Was it just like, don't mind Howard. He's just got a hideous face.
right, exactly. That's how I imagined it. Perfect. There's a couple things I want to talk about here, and that is we'll go from the bottom to the top, if you don't mind. It's our podcast. We do what we want. Yeah,
we do
that's
what
right.
We want.
We're gonna reverse cowgirl this thing. So, Nepenthe. What the fuck is that? Do you know?
Well, I do.
Okay.
I mean, I sort of do, because I don't know if it's still there, but there used to be somewhere like right on the outskirts of Big Sur, I think, there was this restaurant bar up on the cliffs that like looks out over the ocean called Nepenthe. And I've been there, and because people were like, you have to stop at Nepenthe. And I was like, all right, I did. And it was gorgeous and lovely and like rustic and like old California-y, you know.
Did it make you forget your sorrows?
It did.
Like
yeah,
permanently?
Yeah, no, not permanently. Yeah. So that's how I remember like looking, you know, wondering that there's like a sign in there about like Nepenthe is like a thing that would just make you forget your sorrows, or it was like a goddess or something. I couldn't remember what it was. But.
So Nepenthe is like a potion, at least popularized and probably first mentioned in the Odyssey. It is a part of Greek mythology, and Helen of Troy offers Nepenthe to the travelers, right? To say like, well, you can stay here, and here, take this. It'll make you forget your sorrows and woes, right?
Okay.
I think Lovecraft is using it kind of equivalent to amnesia, right? It's like a shocking form of amnesia when the veil has been ripped away and you see all the truths and your mind shuts down, right? This is very common in Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah.
In fact, this was the fate of my character in Zrader's Call of Cthulhu. I caught amnesia. And so like with this effect, then that like strips away. So like for a moment, the outsider remembers that he used to be a person. He used to be, you know, he used to be somebody. He used to be perhaps a contender. Right. Appropriate outsider's quote to drop right here about Ponyboy or whatever.
I literally all I remember is, you know, stay gold, Ponyboy. And then in middle school, we had to read it and then watch the movie. And the entire, you know, I had 85 kids in my entire grade, all through middle school and high school. And pretty much we all watched it together, you know. And so that was just always a joke of like, it would be when, you know how middle and high school kids are, there's like a moment, you're in an assembly or whatever, and there's like a quiet moment where they're transitioning or something, and then somebody just yells out, do it for Johnny, man! Do it for Johnny! Everybody starts laughing.
Slightly earlier than that, there is a mention of, I'm going to look at, oh yes, now I ride with the mocking and friendly ghouls.
Are they? How could they be? I mean, like
they're Muppets.
It's like, well, they're mocking and friendly. To me, that's like
I'm just fucking
bros.
with you. Yeah. They like pop them in the nuts.
Right. Come on, come on. Where you been?
The mocking and friendly bro ghouls on the night wind.
The Brules.
Brules. And play by day amongst the catacombs of Nephrin Ka in the sealed and unknown valley of Hadath by the Nile. So that gives us a little bit of geography there, right? Like I always like a little geography in my Lovecraft. Amongst the catacombs of Nephrin Ka is the debut album from the 1998 death metal band Nile, which is what I was playing when Claire walked in the room. And she came in the room and in a very momish way said, "What are you listening to?"
What is this nonsense?
I have no idea if they're an ongoing concern. They released their entire album on YouTube, and like I said, it was from 1998. So they're all probably in their 50s now.
Yeah.
So. And maybe they're still rocking hard. I have no idea.
I hope so.
Yeah. Maybe today they also ride with the mocking and friendly ghouls on the night wind. There are no other Lovecraft references on this album at all other than the title, as far as I can tell.
Wow.
So, and Nephrin Ka is kind of a late bloomer of a baddie of like a middle boss, I'd say, in the Lovecraft mythos.
Yeah. I recognized the name, but
right, and so did I. And I'm like, where? It's not in Arkham Horror. There's no card anyway, because I looked it up on ArkhamDB.com, which is crazy, which is where I would have expected it. I don't think it's in Eldritch Horror, because in Eldritch Horror, this character is only referred to as the Black Pharaoh.
Okay.
Little racist, but what are you going to do? In Elder Sign, which is another Fantasy Flight Lovecraft board game that so far Claire and I have like failed to get into. Like we don't really, it hasn't clicked with us yet.
Is that the one where you go room to room?
Yeah, you're like in the museum and you're...
Yeah, it's too small scale.
It's small, but there's like, I don't know. Anyway, there's like 5 expansions. One of them is all about Nephrim Ka.
Oh,
so...
Okay.
And Nephrim Ka shows up in some Call of Cthulhu stuff too.
Yeah.
And also shows up in some Robert Bloch fiction in the middle 30s. And Lovecraft reuses Nephrim Ka in Haunter in the Darkness, which was also published in the middle 30s as a response to Robert Bloch's, but we won't get into that because this is not the Haunter in the Darkness episode. And so Nephrim Ka is like, he's associated with Nyarlathotep, which apparently I'm pronouncing wrong every single time I say it, no matter how I say it.
Supposed to say it again? I can't remember.
Nyarlathotep, maybe?
Nyarlathotep?
Nyarlathotep is how I always say it. But the Hotep is the important part, so not a TH.
Oh, Nyarlathotep?
Something like that. Yeah, I don't know. I'm never going to say it that way.
Baba Hotep.
Bubba Hotep.
Baba Hotep?
He doesn't show up in the story about Nyarlathotep, but the Black Pharaoh, I think, does. But anyway, this is the first mention of Nephrim Ka, which is in The Outsider. So So points gathered for first mentions, right?
All right.
Just like Necronomicon is first mentioned weirdly in The Hound, a otherwise kind of throwaway but awesome Gothic story that doesn't really touch a lot of the mythos, but is in fact the first mention of the Necronomicon. So, so I like that a lot. My third thing in the story is the introductory verse by Keats. That night the Baron dreamt of many a woe and all his warrior guests, with shade and form of witch and demon and large coffin worm, were long be nightmared. This sounds goth as fuck, right? And like, oh, what is this from? I didn't know Keats did goth stuff. It turns out he didn't.
Oh.
This is the final stanza.
This is like Gary Keats.
No, it's the real John Keats. But this is the final stanza in the Eve of Saint Agnes. Agnes. I never can pronounce the name right.
That's how you say Agnes. Yes.
Okay, because Agnes is also a character in Arkham Horror.
Yeah, you keep calling her Angus.
Angus. Yes. Angus. It's not Angus. It's Agnes.
Back in black.
That's right. This is why I'm ruined by AC/DC. So it's the Eve of St. Agnes. It's a kind of down the middle romantic story set to verse, right? And this is by Keats. And this bit of it at the very end is just like, it describes the nightmares that other people are having at the very end when like the Romeo and Juliet character go sneak off in the night. So I was a little upset about that. I feel like I got a little bait and switched on that because I was expecting like, oh, this is more gothy shit. And no. This piece, The Outsider, is often compared to Poe, and it has very strong Poe elements, namely Fall of the House of Usher, with the rotting, tower that this guy lives in, which reflects his own decrepitation and all that, right? And then also the reveal, the party, right, is very reminiscent of Mask of the Red Death.
Yeah.
Those are the two. There's like a couple others that are kind of minor, but I think those are the two that like at least leapt out to me. And as I admitted earlier, I did in fact read the encyclopedia and talks a little bit about like the Poe connections, but more about, which I didn't think of, and I don't want to like steal credit from Mr. Joshi, the parallels with Frankenstein. Oh, you're nodding like this is obvious.
Well, yeah. Coming out of the crypt, and he's a stranger to the villagers who all want to clearly are afraid of him, and he just wants to hang out and party.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like in Frankenstein, like the first time he sees himself, right, is in a reflection, and that's when he realizes that he's horrifying. And there's a lot of that here. And then, of course, everyone running away when they see him. And so it was written like in an earlier period where Lovecraft was still doing more gothic horror stuff, right? Like Poe and like Mary Shelley, but published kind of when he was pivoting into truly cosmic horror stuff.
Oh, okay.
So it was published in a weird time in his career. There's a story in the encyclopedia about how he he reread it like 10 years later in 1931 and thought, this kind of sucks, doesn't it?
I mean, we all feel that way about
of course,
stuff that we
right?
wrote.
Yeah, as someone who has written kind of a lot and has my stuff out on the internet, like I will occasionally run into some old stuff that I wrote and think like either, oh, I'm a fucking genius. I was thinking this 10 years ago, or what was wrong with me? Why did I think this? There's no middle ground. Like, I do like the goth stuff that he pulls out. What was the other one? Unnameable. Unnameable is pretty goth. There's a lot of I feel like a lot of unnameable stuff going on. Like maybe the unnameable is the other side of this, where it's like two guys sitting around.
That's kind of what I was like. I was trying to think, I can't remember anything once we have read it and talked about it. It's gone from my mind because I don't have space. But I was like, surely there's some Lovecraft story where there's a bunch of people at a party and then like something comes in through the window and they all go running, right? Like that must be, because I'm always wanting to like, I want to write this story from the perspective of I love shit like that where somebody comes along and tells the story from the other side.
I found on TikTok a artist and she does like pop and rock songs from the girl's point of view.
Yes.
And so I think her best one is about like Stacy from Stacy's mom.
No, you cannot have my mom.
It's very good. Like, go look it up. I'll link to it in the show notes. But it's all about Stacy and how she's like really frustrated with this guy that she likes because the guy that she likes is clearly into her mom, and she's like 40.
Right. Yeah, why? God, so old.
So incredibly old. We got a message from a guy who wanted to give us money and then did, because we have a mechanism for that. We have a tip jar. I know that you're embarrassed by it, but but anyway, somebody wrote in and said we're great, whatever. The thing that stuck out with me in this, which I will read: we listen to your show in our shop while building hot rods here in northern Michigan and enjoy it very much.
What?
Thanks for what you guys do and keep up the good works. Sam from Hellcraft Speed and Design. So if you're in northern Michigan,
this is amazing,
and need to juice your ride, you take it to Sam from Hellcat Speed and Design. They have a YouTube Hellcraft. Yeah, thank you. Hellcraft Speed and Design.
Oh my God, where in northern Michigan?
I don't know. It is. I'm sure it's findable if you Google it. I did find their YouTube channel. Which they maintain. Unfortunately, their website is currently parked at Squarespace.
Oh, all right.
But maybe by the time they hear this, they will unpark it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm sending them all the Podsoth business I can muster for them. If you're a Lovecraft nerd who also is into cars and are in northern Michigan, you could do worse than go to Hellcraft Speed and Design.
When you were talking about living guys working in the shop, I thought for sure it was going to be like, I don't know. I was trying to imagine the nerdiest shop that I could. And then you said that they were like hot rods. And I was like, wait, what?
Yeah. Building
cool?
hot rods. Yeah.
They're cool guys?
Yeah. They're cool dudes. They're cool bros with like bunches of tattoos. And work on cars. Have like giant blowers like on the hood and everything, and do like quarter-mile hot rod runs. And
That's
everything.
Cool.
I live my life a quarter mile at a time.
Exactly. I'll put a
La
drop
Familia.
in there. Yeah, I'm sure they're all about the family.
Hey, yeah, you guys. I don't know if we've mentioned this before, but I'm a huge Fast and the Furious fan.
Claire alone is a huge Fast and the Furious fan. I could take it or leave it. I like it because my wife likes it. She is bananas over this stuff, this entire franchise. Also, if you would like to reach out to us in either a monetary or non-monetary way, that's fine. Either way, I don't care. give me content. That's good. That's good enough too. You can search for Mastodon and Podsothoth, and you'll find our main social media interface. I know nobody uses Mastodon, but I do because I don't like oligarchs, and I don't want to give their services clicks. So we're on Mastodon, which is a delightful Twitter-like distributed social media network where we post somewhat regularly. Just search for Podsothoth, you'll find it. Anyway, the link's in the show notes. Who cares?
Yeah.
You can email us, the original social media, hideous@podsothoth.club. You can remember it because it's like Lovecraft's face, according to his mom.
Poor baby Howard.
We're on Bandcamp. You just search for Podsothoth. You'll find us on Bandcamp. I might have some new material there coming soon for a South by show I'm doing in about a month. And we're on Blue Sky now for some reason. Remember all that shit I said about oligarchs? We're on Jack Dorsey's thing on Blue Sky, but all of it is reposting from Mastodon. That's all. You can follow it from Blue Sky. If you want to like interact with us on Blue Sky, I don't really know how that works, but presumably it would if you also did the whole bridge back to Mastodon. Anyway, it's all nerdy shit.
Nerd alert!
I don't know what we're going to read next time. I never give, this is one of the many things I don't do well in podcasting, and that is give a teaser for the next episode. I kind of choose it based on how much effort do I want to put in reading. I sort by word count and familiarity, like within word count, and then I'll like pick from there.
Well, eventually we'll cover it all.
Eventually I'm going to cover it all. I had no interest in like the reminiscence of Dr. Samuel Jackson.
Enough is enough!
But I read it, mainly because of word count. So I don't know. I don't know what's coming up next. It's a mystery to you and me. If you have requests, let us know. I just gave you all the ways to get in touch with us. And I definitely do honor requests on the couple that I've gotten. So that's it. That's the show. Claire, do you have any final words?
No, just, if you are an American and you're a sane person, hang in there.
Yeah, hang in there.
We're
doing it. We're doing what we can. Courts are catching up.
Burn some shit down.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if we go that far.
Well, I might.